Okay. So we'll kick off for another Friday, and it's the 1st of July. Morning, everyone. Laurie Mode here from Outdoors New South Wales and ACT for another Connect and Share, number 102 on this early morning for the start of a new financial year. So things to think about. We might talk about that a little bit later in the session today, but it's a key time to do a bit of a reset and understand what's going to be before us in the year ahead, financially, fiscally. But first, may I pay my respects to the Aboriginal people who've cared and nurtured our land for so long, and pay my respects to their leaders past and present, and again, continue to work with them in understanding more about the land that we use as our tool to engage all of our visitors and our participants. So I'm going to hand straight over to Thomas. I've got a little bit of a brief there, but I'm going to take that off screen while he talks, and I'll put it back up later, and I'll also put the links in the chat. But Thomas, I'm going to hand over to you, and if you wouldn't mind telling us what you're up to.
Thank you very much, Laurie. It's a real pleasure to be here today with your crew across Australia. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm coming from today. That's the Gadigal of the Eora Nation. And you know, the land is central to my thesis, the environment. That is, we really need to take better care of it, because then it will care for us in return. Why do I say that? Because I'm an environmental epidemiologist. And the thing I do every day when I wake up is think, okay, I need to do some research on identifying all the different reasons in which environments can either, do good for us and keep us on the straight and narrow and help us to grow healthy and happy and strong and live a long and rich and thriving life. Or, unfortunately, at a lot of the environments our brothers and sisters are exposed to, do the exact opposite. And we want less of that, so we can maximize life and minimize the harms that come from various different environments that too many of us are exposed to. One of the things that my lab at the University of Wollongong, that's the Population, Wellbeing and Environment Research Lab, have been studying for approximately donkey's years now, is all the stuff that you can see behind me, all that lovely green space and trees and the wonderful natural environments that we still have, and hopefully stays that way, and we have more of in future. And here's why. Because we've been able to look at Australian populations, hundreds of thousands of people, and tracking their data over periods of time, like between 5 and 10 years. And what we've been able to show is that those of us who are lucky enough to live in areas where there's lots of tree canopy cover, even in big cities like Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane and all the rest of it, folks who have more tree canopy nearby have meaningfully reduced risks of going on to develop heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure, even dementia. Now, this is really key, because a lot of these things, either we have some way of treating or preventing, but we're just not very good at it, or in the case of dementia, we don't have many options at all yet. So the more we invest in our environments, the more we can help meaningfully improve people's lives right from the get-go through to those senior years. Okay? Why is this the case? Well, decades of psychological research have been able to show that there's at least 3 different kind of major pathways linking the natural environment to our health. The first is, and you'll have all had experience of this, I'm sure, you had a hard slog at work, so many different things happening, it's kind of all turned upside down. Where do you go? Walk in the park, or take time out in a nature reserve, or visit a botanic garden like this lovely botanic garden you have a picture of behind me. And psychologists have been able to show that that allows us to effortlessly distract ourselves with something which is not requiring, not demanding a great deal of our attention, and allows us to relax. And that is, of course, looking at the trees, looking at the greenery, enjoying the natural environment for what it is, to be there. So we experience a sense of restoration and also feeling away from stressful encounters. It helps us to feel a great deal of renewal of those cognitive capacities so we can think more clearly, we can be more creative, we can lighten our moods. This, I'm sure everyone has personal experience of. Second thing is, of course, what the Monty Python crew over in the UK would have been referring to as the bleeding obvious, which is nature can be great places to get out and be physically active, to go and meet people, to have a run around, just to take a nice walk or whatever it may be, to exert the muscles in a way which helps us to puff and pant a little bit more, and that can be great for the heart. And the final one is nature helps to reduce harms from the smog of the streets with all those thundering trucks going down nearby, thudding away and pumping out exhaust into our faces as we walk past them. You get out into nature, you extract yourself away from those harmful fumes. And also, of course, in Australia, very, very important, the trees provide us with lovely shade to cool down. And that's especially important in the future when things, unfortunately, are going to get a tad hotter for everyone, and especially for folks who are living in more disadvantaged communities where a lot of the health problems are. So you can see a lot of reasons to invest in green space, and that is happening. In Wollongong, they've got a 20-year strategy to invest in more green space. In Sydney, just last year, over $400 million to invest in 7,000 new mature trees and increase canopy cover to about 40%. This similar is happening in other countries around the world too. Supply won't change everything, though, ladies and gentlemen. And that's where the work that you're doing and many of us around the world to try and connect people with nature, to enable and empower people to spend more time in nature for whom we know it will be good for them. That's what we want to really try and generate a little bit more of. And in particular, the reason why I'm speaking with you today is to see how what we can do in the charity sector, the third sector, can also be driven and championed by the health sector. See, here's the thing. Maybe a person goes to see a general practitioner, right? And they're experiencing some form of significant health misadventure, which may be mental health related. And they may be saying, well, okay, well, we can potentially provide you antidepressant medications, but that won't stop the depression from happening in the first place. So why don't we also prescribe getting outdoors into nature, maybe joining land care to help engage in bush regeneration, or taking part in community gardening, or taking up an allotment, or joining a walking group or an outdoor yoga group, or something that resonates with people's interests, maybe volunteering with the Scouts or whatever it may be. Anything which helps enable people to get outdoors on a regular basis so they can benefit and reap the rewards of the nature that's on their doorstep. And hey, maybe even do a bit of a job helping to conserve that nature for future generations too. So that is, in essence, the next 10 years of the research that's happening in my lab, to see how we can connect the health sector with everyone who's already trying to do this, to see whether we can make it a viable proposition for even the Medicare benefit schedule to help fund some of this. So we can say if a person would benefit to get out into nature for their health, there's a clear pathway through which the healthcare profession can help make that happen. That's what I want to do, and that's what we're exploring with the survey that I'm hoping that many of you will be able to help us fill in. Because what we want to know is, what is the lie of the land at the moment? What is everybody doing at this moment in time to help enable and empower people to get out into nature? Where are perhaps the things that we're doing really, really well? And where are the gaps that we might want to fill over the next 5 to 10 years too, in collaboration, possibly also with the health sector too, because there's a lot of people there who are really, really avid nature goers. They would really love to see clear pathways to help enable their patients, their consumers, their communities to get out into nature more. So we just need to do a little bit of gluing together and see what's happening. And that will be a good place to start.
Yes.
I've rabbited on for far too long, I think.
No, that's great, Thomas. Thank you.
Questions.
It's so good to hear your passion about it too, because, you know, that's where a lot of our guys come from. And, you know, I think we've been looking for quite some time at Japan, and who have probably led in this field for quite some time. And, you know, we often talk about green scripts here, but having that framework behind it to really push it forward. And I'd love to hear other people's thoughts, but I think something you definitely need to connect with is a group that in our network called ABAT, which is the, what does ABAT stand for, Dave? I can't remember. It's Bush Therapy Practitioners.
The Australian, Australian Bush Therapy. Basically, I can't remember the exact words.
Yeah, I'm glad you
right up my street.
Yeah, so we'll definitely connect you with the guys with ABAT, and I think because they're all come from a health background, but exactly what you're saying is very connected to nature opportunities for that change. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic! Yes, so I would love to be connected to them, and I'm sure there are others doing similar work too. We are actually taking a bit of a inspiration from our cousins over in Canada, who there are a bunch of medical professionals in Vancouver started something similar to what you mentioned earlier, nature scripts. They call them park prescriptions.
Right.
And they have now. They started at the end of 2020, right deep in the thick of it, of the COVID-19 pandemic. They now have 10,000 medical practitioners across the whole country of Canada signed up and regularly advising their patients to spend more time in nature based on evidence that we and others have produced. I can't help but think that we would really benefit from something similar to that in Australia, you know?
Yes.
A national program. So.
Yep. There we go. We need to have a pact. We need to have an outdoor pact that we all do a certain amount of outdoor activities on a regular basis.
Yes, indeed.
Fabulous. Does anyone have any questions for Thomas while he's here? I know he's got to duck off to another meeting, but yeah, good opportunity to ask any questions. Or, you know, I've put the link in the chat there for his survey, and just correct me, it is the 23rd of July you need that done by?
If possible, yes, please.
Yep, great. We'll put it into our members newsletter this week so it gets out and people can do that. But thank you very much for joining. If no one's got any questions, we'll let you depart, and we'll get on to our usual course of updates for the week.
Marvelous. Well, thank you very much again for the invitation, Laurie. It's really nice to meet new people. And if there are opportunities for us to reconnect in future, we would like to be able to hold something in person over in our neck of the woods in the beautiful Illawarra and Shoalhaven.
We would love that.
So if there are maybe some keen beans who are living locally or would like to have a bit of a jaunt towards our patch, then keep in touch, because we would like to bring everyone together at some point to have face-to-face meetings and a good
Thomas,
dose of healthy food as well, and talk more about how we do this together.
Now, I don't know your timing on when you're going to have the results, but here's an offer for you. We have our next masterclass, which is the Outdoor New South Wales ACT Masterclass, actually at Mollymook in November. So we are very close to you there. So we might arrange a bit of a site visit or something along the way, or if you want to come down and talk to us about how the research is going.
Wonderful. Yes, we would hope to have the results in from the survey all digested and ready to ship out by November. So couldn't be better. Perfect timing.
Okay, great. We'll keep in contact on that. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Cheerio.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, we'll jump back over to our presentation for this morning. Yeah, some great insights there. Do you agree? I think, you know, getting more and more of these studies out there is certainly helping us in a lot of the discussions that we're having, even at federal political level and state level. So hopefully Thomas's work and his colleagues is going to bring some great, more evidence to support what we do. So let's keep going on what's going on. And there is a few need to knows. And as you know, this is the beginning of the new financial year. There's new rules that often come in at this time of year. And the first one I really wanted to stress is the superannuation change, that there is no more thresholds for super. So if you have casuals and employees that are under that $350 threshold, that you have not had to have paid super to them prior, that is now changed. So you've got to factor that into your budgets and work with your employees to make sure you've got all the details that you need there. There's a couple of links. I will throw them into the members newsletter so that you can click on those and get the information that you may need for your particular circumstances. But I can't stress enough, again, this is a great time to talk with your accountant, do a bit of a reset on all of the things that might have changed in this year coming forward, and make sure you're compliant with all of the rules. Don't risk that uncompliance. Okay, awards. There's a couple that are happening at the moment. OEA have actually extended their deadline, I think due to school holidays and all sorts of things, but they're actually open now till the 15th of July. So if you've got an outdoor educator or an outdoor education program that you believe is certainly deserved of recognition, please jump onto the OEA website and nominate your nomination, whether it be person or program. So they will be announced at the National Outdoor Education Conference.
I have a question.
Go for it, Jeffrey.
I was reading in there that it's members of OEA. Now, I couldn't recall the structure, and is Outdoors New South Wales ACT members,
correct,
therefore by default a member of.
Correct,
yep,
that's right. So a member of the peak body that's a member of the OEA network. So
yep,
as long as you're one of our members, you can certainly submit for
yep,
those.
Yep.
Yeah.
I assume that was the case, but I just couldn't remember the structures.
Yep, no, good. I'm glad you asked because I forgot to also mention that. So thank you. The other awards that are out at the moment are the Tourism Awards. Now, unfortunately, New South Wales nominations have closed, but I reckon if you call them, they might squeeze you in there because the submissions aren't due until the 24th of August. So you've got some considerable time to pull those submissions together for New South Wales. But Canberra is open at the moment and nominations close on the 8th of July. So if you're in the ACT and you want to enter the Canberra Region Tourism Awards, you can do that by nominating before the 8th of July, but your submission is not due until the 16th of September. So they've actually got quite a few more weeks than New South Wales. So yeah, jump in. And I have to say, after years of being involved in this program, it is a great professional development program. It is one of those things that you tend to learn more about your business by going through the process than most award opportunities. So treat it like a business development process, as well as hopefully one day at the end of the day, you might take out one of the awards there. Grants, there's a couple around, and obviously I want to mention again the MOX grant, which is the music and overnight camps scheme, and please jump in and apply for your grant there if you were affected in term 4 and schools were your one of your biggest clientele, so you couldn't operate in term 4 2021. So jump on there, make sure you get your 30,000 if you can apply for the whole lot, or whatever amount you can, and that will, from what I hear, the process is seamless and people have already got the money in the bank. So make sure you jump in there and grab your grant. The other ones I thought I'd mention is the Event Development Fund by Destination New South Wales. So for those that are looking at events, and the FOC is a great example of that. So the Festival of Canoe and Kayak, which was run by Valley Outdoors a couple of weeks ago, that was a great opportunity for a development fund type of event because they're getting it off the ground. So if you've got an idea about starting up an event in your area, that is a great one for you. And the bottom one there is Strengthening Business Program. This one is actually for anyone that was flood affected, fire affected, that can be put in contact with advisors on business and systems and processes, and perhaps they can come along and assist your business in looking at a different direction, perhaps to what you didn't expect or what you haven't looked at in the past. So the Strengthen Business program is there. It is a great opportunity for a bit of in-kind support, no cost to you, and it is Australia-wide. So it doesn't matter what state or territory you're in, you can apply for that Strengthen Business program if you were affected by flood or fire. The other two I thought I'd mention is the We Join variety. Now, this is a great one to look at inclusive access and participation. So if you are wanting to be more inclusive, adapt some of the infrastructure you might have, or you've got an idea about different equipment that you might need to be more inclusive, this is a great opportunity to get into variety and certainly apply for those funds, which can go towards your equipment. And the Mental Health Month closes on the 8th of July. This one is between $500 and $1,000 for looking at some mental health outcomes. So it could be running a program where you're looking specifically, and Thomas talked about it this morning, but you know, what Thomas was saying about that mental health change in the outdoors, we do a lot of this naturally. Maybe there's a program that you can work with Mental Health Month and join in on their support and also receive up to $1,000 to help fund the program that you wish to offer. So jump in there and get the opportunities that are out there. Now, we often have opportunities on Have Your Say. Now, this could be planning legislation, it could be council legislation, it could be all different sorts of things. But there's a couple of key ones that I need people to look at. And the first is the Gardens of Stone. We've talked about this for a couple of weeks now, but it is now D-Day. It closes next Tuesday. As we know, the Gardens of Stone is an outdoor mecca for our industry. It looks at all different types of activities, and we want to ensure. In progress. I'll just mute you there, Dan. There we go. Had a bit of feedback. Yeah, and we want to make sure that these activities do continue through this next phase of coming in under national parks legislation as a nature reserve. So I can't stress enough that this is our opportunity to really tell National Parks and Wildlife what we value about the Gardens of Stone conservation area and what needs to continue in activities in this area. So please, if you really don't have much to say it anyway. Jump on, grab onto the link off the environment site and make sure that they're aware that we are very committed to this space and ensuring that it remains as a great opportunity for people to get outdoors in our activities. The second one is a big one. I know the Gardens of Stone's a big one, but this is a bigger one. This has huge implications, and Jeffrey, please feel free to jump in at any time on this one, because you only know too well as I do the implications of ANZCO. And we saw it over COVID even. ANZCO was basically the standard by which the government looked at to classify us, to classify our workplace, to classify our activity, our occupation, our income, everything. Now, what we found over COVID was that we all didn't fit in the same box, and that meant that we all didn't get the same opportunities. It's a little bit ambiguous when it comes to our industry as well. You could fit in this area, you could fit in this area. We are not really defined well in the ANZCO. So we've got this opportunity. And you might remember that we were told in the very 11th hour about some consultation they were doing in this space a little while ago. I think the comments and the feedback they got from that has obviously led to this larger review, and I hope that's the case. But yes, this is our opportunity to say our piece when it comes to ANZCO. It's open until the 26th of July, so we've got a little bit more time. The website is there. It's quite easy. Consult at abs.gov.au. Jeffrey, did you want to add anything to that?
I certainly do. I think it's really important to comment, but with considering where things go with this. So the classification of occupations then impacts a range of other things. So when we look at qualifications, they are usually also put against a classified occupation. Now, when we look at industry awards, they're often put against classified occupations. When we look at what people put as the industry they work in, that is a classified occupation. Now, what does that really mean? Now, I'm going to come from the perspective of the qualifications first up, and that is that outdoor leadership qualifications, for example, there's not a lot of people who work in that industry according to the ANSCO codes.
Exactly.
We look at other surveys the industry's done, and we know there's a lot larger numbers. When we look at things like awards, and you end up with people working in the outdoors sector being under awards that are to do with theme parks, you go, all right, I get the connection, but at the same time, is it the appropriate ANSCO code to the type of work? So it is really important that, because these classifications impact funding, because if there's only so many people working in that sector, then we only need to fund that much to qualifications in the sector.
Exactly.
And yet we know the numbers are much larger. So really think about this. I know Laurie's been commenting, I know I've been commenting, but certainly others who give it some considered thought, really please provide your feedback about where the problems are.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I think the other thing, and apologies, I'm sure you guys have heard me rabbit on about this for way too many times, but when I first started and understanding when COVID hit, what we actually lost, it was very hard to find any of that data. This sort of change goes a long way to supplying some of that data. It's not the be all and end all, certainly, but it is, as Jeffrey said, it is plugged into so many different areas that it is a great way to start pulling out the value of what we are. Dave, you got a question? You're on mute there for a minute.
Just a comment in a sense, I guess, should we be writing to Fair Work and trying to reduce the number of awards, that are applicable to our industry as it exists? For instance, I know camps that are using the Hospitality Award, for their outdoor leaders, and sort of there's something that sort of says you can be like you can run an activity, but I don't think it's meant to be an activity in the sense of an outdoor activity or a highline. It's really meant to be, a little recreation thing, throwing a ball to each other or something like that.
Jeffrey, you want to comment?
So in response to that, Dave, I would actually say that writing to Fair Work is, I get where you're coming from. Totally agree where you're coming from. A big thing about this classification of occupations is because our sector has been fairly unclassified according to this, then as a result, we end up in multiple locations, in multiple spaces that we probably don't really belong. Having an appropriate classification of occupations helps inform any review of awards. And so commenting on this actually sets it up so that if we then later are commenting on awards, we've set it up in the first place to have the right positioning.
Exactly. I was going to say something along not as well articulated, but it's sort of the challenge we've got is that businesses can choose which award they go under, but the fact of the matter is we haven't had enough evidence to substantiate our own award or whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of moving parts. This is a crucial one. So making sure that the industry certainly jumps on this, and I will be putting out an industry alert specifically on this because of that importance that we've all got to make sure that we have our say. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Really, really great stuff. Looking forward to the outcomes. So events, what's actually happening? It's a very exciting week next week because we start our ACT Mentoring Program. And this is specifically for women, and it came from the Office of Sport and Rec in Canberra to support women. And yeah, this will be kicking off on the 6th of July. It's only a 10-week program, but running very similarly to our current mentoring program, which we've got going, but in a very shortened, impactful, it'll be full on for them, but it'll be a great outcome where we get to match together some of our fabulous ACT women and some mentors from right around the country. And need I even talk about it again, but I will, is the National Outdoor Education Conference. So that is coming up in September. Less than 90 days now. It seems surreal because I feel at this moment I should be cancelling again. We keep going cancel, postpone, but we are not. We're going to make this thing happen this year. So it's looking fabulous. The program is awesome. As you can see there, there's 33 sessions that you can choose from on Tuesday, 28 sessions on Wednesday, as well as some amazing panelists, keynote speakers, and our fabulous dinner at the Hydro Majestic Hotel. So looking amazing. Make sure you grab your tickets for that, and we will see you there. Now, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about on the up-to-dates, but I wanted to really share with you guys. I attended the McCrindle session on the census, and there were some key things that really did come out of the census this year. Does anyone remember anything that they saw on the news that would be impactful for our industry? You probably haven't had a chance to see the news, unlike me. Okay, great. So let me take you through a bit of a snapshot on what Mark McCrindle and his team took us through. The interesting shifts, and he did a beautiful acknowledgement at the start of the session by acknowledging the 812,728 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the country. Now, to put it in realistic terms, that's a huge increase from the census that was the previous census. And whether that's a sign of acceptance or whether we're working closer with them to engage in this process, they couldn't really say, but it's a very pleasing result to see that we've got a lot more of our traditional people coming forward and working with us. There's 167 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages spoken in the country. So that's an incredible insight there. And the one thing I loved about Mark is he paid testament to the 32,000 staff of the ABS that pulled the census together. I think that was a bit of a moment for me where I went, wow, I had no idea. But the completion rate, and whether this was COVID related or not, I'm not too sure, but the completion rate this year was, or last year was 96.1%, again, higher than any other census to date. Our population, no doubt, is increasing. As we know, it's gone up 8.6% over the last 5 years, and New South Wales remains as the highest population with the highest growth. Now, we do have a bit of a shift. Our baby boomers certainly have led the generation vote here, but now Gen Y has taken them over, and Gen Y makes up a third of our current workforce, 5.5 million of them. And they're producing 3 million children. So they're in that state now that they're the most educated and producing the most amount of kids than any other generation. The interesting thing is they also make up half of our Defence Force. So an industry that we really do need to connect with, particularly for our industry. He did some great analogies on the difference between the 1981 census and last year's census. And I love the fact that he brought up that we were still asking people if their houses were made of asbestos in 1981. We only had 14.5 million people back then. And we were asking if they were born at sea in 1981. Not something that we saw in this census for sure. The other shifts that we saw were the religion and Christianity decreasing. So the more people that were saying that they were not religious based or had no faith had certainly increased. Then when he actually went into the defence quite a lot, which was pleasing for me, as we know that that's an area that we want to work with. But currently there's 85,000 people that are recruited in the Defence Force. But what we actually have had from previous served people is 500,000 people in Australia. 1 in 20 households have direct contact with the Defence Force. The other area that we touch on quite a lot is the mental health outcomes of this. Now, whether that's COVID related or whether it is a sign of our shifts as a nation, it was the #1 health issue, mental health. 2.2 million people were living with some sort of mental health issue, which equated to 9% of the population. Obviously, talking amongst friends here, you know, we've got a lot that we can contribute to this discussion and a lot that we can provide. The other things that he pointed out was the cost of housing, obviously the increase of rent, and now it's actually 32% of the population are in the state of rent stress, which is 30% above their income. So the cost of living again is actually on that rise, as we've heard only too well in the media. He did point out that there was another number that we needed to remember, and that was 1,503. That's the amount of days until we fill out the census again, which will be the 11th of August in 2026. He's a demographer. Okay, give him space. He was very excited around that one. But needless to say, we're looking at a population increase in the 2030 year, at the moment around 29 million, but he's obviously looking at the 2026 census to see if that's correct. 67% of us are all living in capital cities. There is still a want and a need to move regionally, as we've heard in some of his other studies, but 67% are still living in capital cities. There's not too much shift in owning a house, mortgaging a house, or renting a house. It's very much, pretty much 33, 33, 33 on average, right across. But New South Wales continues to forge in the largest income growth, but ACT has the largest income, so per person. So ACT, you could say, is the more richer territory or state, but New South Wales has that largest income growth across the country. The one thing I actually have brought to these sessions before, which is continually being a conversation, is around cultural diversity. We are the most cultural diverse country now, with 48% of us having one parent born overseas. That's nearly half of the population. That actually means that the continual conversation we have around inclusivity and making sure that we give access to our products and services through other languages, other cultural exchange, understanding inclusivity in general, because certainly the ones that are coming into the country that are the highest, where England is still leading at 4%, but India is 3%. And we know from experience that India has other cultural challenges when it comes to Australia, and we need to consider that in what we provide as our experiences. The language differences as well. So we want to embrace, you know, these new Australians into our experiences. How do we do that? China is the next one at 2%, and New Zealand is at 2%. But where we're seeing some real shifts is Nepal is the fastest growing population coming to this country. So I'm watching that one with interest, because if the Nepalese, from what I understand, I want to do some more research, but they're adventure goers. So, you know, how do we embrace them and when they're coming to Australia? The other ones are the Philippines, Vietnam, Iraq, and Pakistan are all on a very high growth curve. The ones that are decreasing are Italy, Greece, Germany, and Scotland. Our traditional markets are all decreasing. So that means that 22.3% of our population are non-English speaking at home. So let's just think about that. That's, you know, close to just under a third, or under a quarter, sorry, of all people that speak a different language. Another interesting fact was women were outliving men by 4 years at the moment, but women are more likely to be affected by mental health. And of all the mental health issues, 63% were age 65 and over. Heart disease and diabetes were the two other areas of health that were on the high end of issues in Australia. And unfortunately, the one that they ended with, which to me was a sobering statistic, particularly when we rely, and Jeffrey, you'll attest to this, we rely on volunteering so much, the volunteering is an all-time low at 14%. So whether that has the COVID effect attached to that, which might be because the census was done then, not too sure, but I'm going to watch with interest on what happens in this space and how we continue to connect with opportunities of volunteering to support our work. Questions, and I may have to take on notice, but if there's anything I've mentioned that hits home or you want more information on, let me know. Insightful, absolutely, love this stuff.
McCrindle are usually really good at doing a range of stuff on volunteering, and not just that, but also on contributions. So that can even be financial donations and things.
Yes.
I know this was census stuff, but they touch heavier on that, or did they just keep it very much?
This was very much census related, but I was lucky enough in some of those things that I mentioned in there, chatting with Mark online while he wasn't speaking, and then chatting with others while they weren't speaking and asking those questions. They have a great Q&A section, which they always respond to. But yeah, I think there's going to be some more content coming out, particularly on that social stuff and the volunteer stuff that they do on a regular basis, which is just awesome.
Yep. Thanks.
No worries. Any other questions or interesting points that we should take on as an industry, or as a, things that we need to make sure we're on top of? I think the Y generation is an interesting one.
Laurie, just on the language thing, that's been an interesting test case in the US and the UK around disclosure of informed consent issues, yes, disclosure of medicals and so on. So it's an emerging issue, definitely an emerging issue in Australia, because if the person signing that, and it actually was a case in Melbourne around a drowning a number of years ago, sadly, because it wasn't clearly understood that swimming was part of the activities. Right. And so I think with that change and increasing shift in English as a second language, yes, with almost a quarter of the population, that's like, oh, we need to shift this way of thinking really quickly. So that's an interesting one for us as an industry.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dave. And I'm glad you're on the same page as me. It's been something I've been concerned about for quite some time, because I think traditionally, it's very hard to shift some of the mind frames or thinking on that. But yeah, when that data sort of came up, and we all knew it was coming, but when it's put in front of you like that, it's like, whoa, okay, yep, we need to do something more.
And to your thinking, David, and I quite appreciate it. I also, we've got on the wall here a bunch of things that McCrindle have produced in the past, and they're basically a whole bunch of pictographs. The other thing is, I think that we use icons a lot in our daily life. And yet when we put out permission forms and things like that, we use a lot of text.
Yes, really good point.
So maybe I'm just thinking pictographs, icons, etc. could supplement and help tell part of the story. Obviously you cannot rely on them, but yes, it's absolutely.
Yeah, really good point. The other one that I'm slightly concerned about is just acceptance of cultural difference as well. When it comes to, as we saw, India is the largest growth of our population, and even amongst that community, there are rules and things, or cultural rules that they have, which sometimes our PPE may not adapt to. So how do we work with them to make sure that they can be part of our activities, but we're still very culturally sensitive about their wants and needs? Has anyone had an example of that? Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing it if we haven't already, but yeah, we need to put a thinking cap on there, and that might be one for the masterclass in November as well. Awesome. Any other comment or question on any of that? No? You might have noticed I also did a bit of an interview this week with Spotlight Radio, getting a bit of focus on the outdoors. A great conversation. It's on our Facebook and our LinkedIn if you want to have a squiz at it. But yeah, just getting a wider voice, which is always part of our work here at Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. On that note, I might stop the recording and open for general discussion. Thank you for attending.